Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Renewal Ministries YouTube channel. Rachel Herbeck here. And again, so happy to be with you for the next few minutes as we just talk about what is God saying? What is God saying to us? And how do we want to continue to grow in holiness? And as usual, I have just a little word from the Lord that the Lord's been putting in my heart, that He's been stirring in me, that I want to share with you today as you're watching this. And hopefully the Lord speaks to you and the Holy Spirit speaks to you, and you can take this back into your own prayer time and see what God is saying to you and speaking into your own life. And so over the last couple of weeks, I've been reading this little book here. I found it in the trunk of my car when I actually finally cleaned out my car. So that was a plus. I made my 3 and 4 year old nephews were helping me clean out my car, and they're like, "There's another book in here." and I had a couple books by Sister Ruth Burrows. This is actually her pen name. Her real name is Sister Rachel, and she's a sister of Jesus of Nazareth, the Sisters of Jesus of Nazareth. And she has a lot of amazing books, one called The Essence of Prayer that I would really recommend. But I picked up this little book. It's called Extravagant Love, the Self-Emptying of Jesus. And there's these little chapters. They look like this, and they're very short, and it's perfect to read in your prayer time. And I kind of it's like a Jacques Philippe book. You know, it's like you read one page and then you're like, now I need to sit with this for 3 years. And then I'll be ready to move on once the Holy Spirit has helped me work through this. But I was kind of whipping through the book, and I stopped and have been stopped on this little poem called A Garden for God. And I've been praying with it every single day, and the Lord's been taking me deeper and deeper, and it's been challenging particular places of my heart. It's been comforting particular places of my heart. And what I want to do today is I want to read it for you, and I want to go through and let the Holy Spirit speak on a few points that I think are really important and that I've been convicted of. So I'm just going to go ahead and read it without a lot of introduction. Again, it's called A Garden for God. This is Sister Ruth Burrows. I'm going to go through it, and then we'll go back to the beginning, just like we do when we go through scripture. She says, I made a garden for God. No, do not misunderstand me. It was not on some lovely estate or even in a pretty suburb. I made a garden for God in the slum of my heart. A sunless place between grimy walls, the reek of cabbage water in the air, refuse strewn on the cracked asphalt, the ground of my garden. This was where I labored night and day over the long years in dismal smog and cold. There was nothing to show for my toil. Like a child, I could have pretended. My slum transformed, an oasis of flowers and graceful trees. How pleasant to work in such a garden. I could have lost heart and neglected my garden to do something else for God. But I was making a garden for God, not for myself. For His delight, not mine. And so I worked on in the slum of my heart. Was He concerned with my garden? Did He see my labor and tears? I never saw Him looking, never felt Him there. Yet I knew, though it felt as if I did not know, that He was there with me, waiting. He has come into His garden. Is it beautiful at last? Are there flowers and perfumes? I do not know. The garden is not mine, but His. God asked only for my little space to be prepared and given. This is garden for Him, and my joy is full. I just love that. I've been meditating on that, and I think there's something. Initially, when I read it, there was something that really just hit me about it, even if I couldn't put my finger on it, that there's almost like this groaning and this longing in our heart that we like relate to this experience, you know, that we relate to this garden being in the slum of our heart. And honestly, friends, I've been going back and reflecting on this little poem every single day. And it's been both challenging me, like I said, and giving me this source of comfort, which I think is so like the Lord. You know, when he moves us with something, it both challenges and confronts our hearts. But in that challenging, it's not a condemnation. There's also a source of comfort there. And so I want to go through a few points that convicted me, because like I've been saying on these videos, I feel like I've been just in a battle season. I feel like I've been in a season of purification, sometimes giving into a lot of discouragement, of feeling in this place like, Lord, I feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. I feel like I'm reaching out to you. I feel like I'm trying to grow in virtue, and I don't see many flowers breaking through the cracks. right? I don't even necessarily feel the sun on my face. And maybe you relate to that. Maybe you're in a season of suffering. Maybe you're in a season of discouragement. But there's a couple things that I want to touch on. And the first is just this reality and this acceptance. And this is something I've been experiencing in my own life through purification, and actually coming to a point where I've been experiencing a lot of freedom and comfort in it, is the realization and acceptance of our own poverty. And actually getting to a place where our own poverty doesn't like freak us out, and also doesn't bring us to the place of needing to hold on to the things about us that might separate us and protect us from our own poverty, but actually accepting these places of poverty as a pure place of freedom and dependence. And we see that from the beginning of this poem. I think so many of us relate to this image of this garden for God. I know St. Therese has a lot of garden imagery. It's so strewn throughout the saints, but it's like we think of this beautiful garden with all the different wildflowers and all this kind of stuff. And then many of us, when we compare it to our own heart, we're like, well, I know my heart, and I know like all the flowers are dandelions and weeds, and it seems like everything in there is dead, like at certain places. It's like, so I think this is so powerful. It was this garden. It wasn't on some lovely estate or even in some pretty suburb. I made a garden for God in the slum of my heart. And a slum isn't just like a bad neighborhood. When I think of slums, I think of the places that Mother Teresa was going. It's not just like, oh, this back alley, in a city and there's some trash cans there. The slums were like the dirtiest, grossest places in the city, where it's just like there's, streams of garbage, streams of, she said, refuse, like people are left there. They're dying there. Think of Mother Teresa, the people who she was picking up, their wounds are festering. It's not a pretty place. And I think sometimes even for our own protection, we try to make our own poverty and our humanity pretty, because it's too hard to feel like we can accept those places if we don't dress them up, if we don't make those places pretty. But there's something about even this first section. It's such a relief, this place. As I was praying with this, that sunless space between grimy walls, what the Lord was saying to me is that place, not just like the general place of your heart that sometimes you sin and sometimes it's hard. It says that place, and we all have it. That place where we're like, I can never show anybody. That deep place of shame, those deep places of brokenness where we're still grappling with, like, deep down, could God really love me there? That place is so messy. That place is so broken. Maybe the place right outside that, the place right outside the slum, that's still not a great neighborhood, like, Jesus, you can come into the ghetto of my heart, but definitely not the slums. That place where we still have doubt that we can be loved there. He's saying that is the place. That is the space that I want the garden to be. Friends, whatever is the place in your heart where you think it is most unlikely for God to grow something, the place that you're convinced that is too dark, that is too void of the sun, that is too broken, that is too hard, that is the place precisely where he's saying, I want that space for my garden. I'm just beginning. Every year I have a very small plot. I do not have a green thumb by any means. I literally was looking up like vegetables that are hardest to kill, and that's what I have to go. But I rent a house in Michigan, and I have a little plot, and I did tomatoes and zucchini and stuff last year, but I now have to go and redig everything back up again. But every year you kind of like take stock based on the plants. Like my friend, her grandma has some plants that she's going to give me, and they're different than the ones I normally plant in a certain area. So you got to kind of, a gardener's job is to take stock of the area and say, what are the best places for these plants to grow? What does this plant need? Does it need sunlight? And it's not very common that you pick like the corner of your yard that's the rockiest, that gets the least amount of sun, that the soil is the hardest. In the human, you'd be like, this is the worst place to plant. But the vision of God, he looks in the corners of our heart and he's saying, where's the rockiest soil? Where's the place that has been hidden from the sun? And he says, that's the place that I want to go. That's the place where I want you to offer this up to me. But so often, friends, I don't even let the Lord go there, because there's so much of my own ego that still flares up that says, I need to, I can accept some of my poverty, But I need to protect myself, because what will happen to me if I just let that be seen? And I love in the next chapter, Sister Ruth, she has a quote about this. She says, when we have within us ingrained ways of mitigating our poverty, and for that reason cannot readily perceive that to be human is to be poor in the deepest sense. She continues on. She says, our ego insists on having its own way, manipulating other people and circumstances to smooth its path and satisfy its desires. Unless with Jesus, we lovingly accept the essential poverty of our humanity, acknowledging that our true security and fullness of being are to be found only in the Father's undergirding arms, we can never really love. We will be irritable, quick to take offense, resentful, and unhappy. That's convicting. That's convicting, because I find that in myself, so those places, we either do one of two things to mitigate. I love that line, to mitigate the reality of our own poverty, because it can be too painful for us. So on one hand, I'm either defensive and I can't accept correction, and I need to protect myself in that way. I need to prop myself up. Or we go the other way and we put on a false sense of poverty and we hate ourselves. And we can't accept affirmation. We can't actually accept love. We're like, oh, I'm the worst. I'm terrible. That false sense of humility. And for me, it's hard for me to land in the middle. I often oscillate between these two things, and both are a mechanism of self-protection. And so to even begin in this garden, this is our lives. This is our heart, that the project of our lives is with God to cultivate this garden for Him in our hearts, to say, I've been given this little space in this little time, and I'm going to cultivate this place in my heart. But friends, the first step is accepting our poverty and dependence. And I love Jesus. He actually came and He experienced the depth of poverty of humanity. And He became actually obedient to it. And it says He became obedient to the Father, and He submitted Himself to the poverty of the human experience, so that we could be dependent on Him fully in this way. And so to do this work, to approach this work of cultivating the garden for Him, and this is how we enter into some freedom, is to say, actually, this place that I'm cultivating, it's for Him. It's not for me. When it's for me, I get attached to ego. I get attached to pride. I need to defend myself. I need to protect myself. But to actually let go. So continuing on. This was where I labored day and night over the long years in dismal smog and cold. There was nothing to show for my toil. And this is something that I want to point out that I think is really convicting, is this work of cultivating our garden. Jesus does the work with us, but it's work. I think many of us experience that, and then we're like, something's wrong. Like it's not work in the terms of earning. It's not like I'm making this garden for God so I can present it to Him and be like, love me, look what I did. But the work of the human heart and creating pathways for God's grace to come and purify us, the work of life is work. The spiritual life is work. It's not earning work, but it's effort. To continue to combat those places, and it's effort and work that's done with the amazing supernatural power of God on our side, but it's work, friends. And I've been experiencing this in my own life. Honestly, in the past 2 weeks, I've been experiencing some temptation, like literally out of nowhere. Like literally, when you wake up in the morning and then you're kind of half awake and you wake up too early, so you kind of half go back asleep, but you're mid, like you're half dream, half awake. It's like even in that space, the devil's been attacking me with like these half dreams that are like these temptations. And I wake up like my heart beating really fast of these things out of nowhere from my past. And I've just noticed in so many areas, the devil coming and tempting me to despair, tempting me to discouragement. And friends, it's not like you're just there and you're like, okay, Lord, like I trust you. Yes, we trust Him. Yes, we ask for His power, but it's work. It's labor, it's battle. And sometimes we're in seasons that are hard and discouraging, and we feel like, Lord, I'm toiling. There's another place where she says, did God even see my labor and my tears? How many of you feel like so many seasons of your life are full of labor and tears? And you're like, what's wrong? What's wrong here? And I just want to say that, like, God, he sees it. And it's okay that there's aspects of the spiritual life that we actually were fighting with our old man by the grace of God to continue to keep our hearts open. I think so much of the battle of life, when you look out into the world, whether it's the brokenness in our own families, whether it's the brokenness of the world, so much of the battle, friends, against the enemy in cultivating our garden is to keep the soil tender, to actually fight against the ways of the enemy, to keep our hearts tender. To say, like, Lord, no, like, help me. I'm not going to close my heart off. I'm not going to stop working. I'm not going to say, this is pointless. This is too hard. This is too painful. I'm not going to let my circumstances tell me what I should be doing in my garden. Last year, I came back from the camp that we do, and on the last day, I got a message from my landlord basically being like, the outside of your house is way too unruly, and you guys got a citation from the city because of all of your weeds. It was just growing crazy. And so, of course, I get home, and at 11 p.m., I'm like digging. Yeah, I'm like trying to get all these weeds out and stuff. And the next day, we did 9 hours of pulling weeds out of our front yard. 9 hours. And it was hard work. I kept being like, let's take a break. And I had a friend with me and she's like, no, keep going, you know? But it felt amazing at the end. It was like, that was work. We did that. And our yard was beautiful. But it was this work of like, we were cultivating the ground and it wasn't easy. And so there's just some expectation of friends of changing our expectation of being like, why is this hard? It's hard. It's simple, but it's hard. And God's grace is there with us, but there's this reality of the labor. So the first thing is accepting our own poverty as we work in this garden of our hearts. For me, allowing the Lord to be my security so that my ego and my pride doesn't have to protect me. Because when I'm secure in the Lord, I can accept the conditions of my garden. I can accept the conditions of my slum because I know that it doesn't speak about who I am. It doesn't speak fundamentally about my identity. 2, being okay with, this is work, Lord, this is work. Let's get to work. Let's have a little grit in the garden. This was the saints, you know? The saints are like, let's get to work. Let's roll up our sleeves for your kingdom, Lord. I know I talked about that song before. I love that song, Garden or The Gardener by Sarah Kroger. And I love Sarah because her voice is so sweet. And then you're listening to the lyrics and you're like, this is tough. Like this song, it's like Sarah's voice is so angelic. And you're like, what, to do what you have to do to help tend the garden of my heart. And that's gritty lyrics. That's not just like, oh yes, I'll just, like it'll just be so easy and fun, It's gritty, it's labor. And continue to go on. I love that she said, I could pretend that everything like is perfumey and looks so beautiful. I could pretend to do that, but I'm not. I'm going to stay in the reality of my heart. Or I could lose heart and say, this is too hard. And I could do something else for God. And I think this is so key. There's so many places in my life where the Lord has asked me to do something. The Lord has asked me to either do a work for him, vocationally or whatever it is, or to do an inner work, to look at something in my heart. And then I'm like, yeah, I'm not seeing the fruit. It's like been a week, and I'm like, I'm not seeing the fruit I want to see. Or it's been a long season. I'm like, I'm not seeing the fruit I want to see. I'm going to choose to do something else for you that I think is more glamorous, that I think is better. We see this so much with the saints. They're not like off looking like, what is the coolest, most exciting thing that people will remember me for as a saint when I die? Right? The Lord invited Mother Teresa to cultivate a particular mission, to give herself. That was what her mission was. It was a giving of herself over to the Lord in a very particular way. And I bet on days when she wasn't getting the Nobel Peace Prize, when people weren't noticing her, when the people she was picking up from the slums were ungrateful, when she was experiencing the dark night of the soul, that she was like, Jesus, can I do something else for you? Can I go do something else? I'll do a really good work. I'll go back with the sisters. They're doing really good. The teaching is a really good work. Maybe I could go do that. That we, because of how we feel about what we're doing, and because of our own attachment to the vision of the fruit, not God's vision of the fruit, our vision of the fruit, we want to determine what we should cultivate for God. And he's saying, no, 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 no. But I love this so much. And you can see I underlined it in multiple colors because this is so much the season that I'm in. This kind of determination. I just imagine like almost just like a stomping of like the foot being like, no, I was making a garden for God, not for myself, for his delight, not mine. And so I worked on. This kind of like, again, that's like there's something so beautiful and tender in that. And then at the same time, there's something like gritty in that of like, Lord, no, I'm remembering I'm having these temptations of like, oh, I'm too weak. I'm not seeing the fruit that I want to see. Other people don't think my garden is that great and that cool. And then just that kind of coming back to no, I'm making this garden for you. You asked me to make this garden. And she continues and she finishes and she says, I never felt God there in that place in my garden, in those slums. I never felt him there, but I knew he was there, even though I felt like he wasn't. And even in the end, I didn't know, I love this in the poem, she said, I didn't know what kind of flowers were in my garden. I didn't know if it was perfumey. I didn't know it was beautiful because it was his. But I did know that it was his because I did it for him. And so friends, maybe you're in a season like me where it's like, just keep getting up day after day and letting the Lord in those places of your poverty to help you cultivate this garden. And maybe you're discouraged because you're like, I'm not seeing the fruit. Maybe you're toiling, but to just have that last line, God asked only for my little space to be prepared and given. He's not asking for this massive heroism. He's not asking for you to find an amazing, cool mission and go do it and grab hold of it. He's asking today, in this moment, in the next moment, for that tender, broken, hidden space in your heart to be prepared and given to him. That's it. And so to go with him today and say, Lord, what is that space? What is that place? And today to say, I'm not going to worry about the outcome. I'm not going to worry about if I feel you there. I'm not going to worry about how hard it is. My only concern is to prepare and give you that little space because it's your garden, not mine. God bless you.